Welcome to the new chapter of my life. And it only didn't turn into very tragic turn of event is because I left the hospital. It's been a while since I filmed the last video. I took a little bit of a break from YouTube, precisely 3 weeks. So if you follow my channel for a while, you know that my life has changed tremendously, entirely, because after many years of trying 3 rounds of IVF, lots of surgeries, I finally become a mom. If you haven't seen my most recent video, which shows my pregnancy transformation progression, I encourage you to have a look at that because it documents the beauty of the whole entire process and the whole journey that I went through eventually and at last. And in general, I'm very happy that I filmed that. I took a commitment to do it every single week. So it's not only for other people to see, but I have something to go back to and look at. And we watched that together with my husband when it was uploaded, and it was a very touching moment for both of us to see the whole process in one. In today's video, however, I'm going to talk about my birth experience. So my baby is currently 3 weeks old today. I don't believe it. I still can't believe that he's ours, that he's with us, and he's already 3 weeks old. That feels so surreal and so amazing at the same time. But today I'm gonna talk about my birth experience. I'm gonna tell you why I chose to give birth the way I did, which was in contrary to what I was planning the whole entire pregnancy, the reasons why I chose this certain type of birth over other, what went good and what went wrong. So I'm gonna tell you at the end of this video how something that started really positively and really in the way that exceeded my expectations in a good way turned into medical emergency, and basically how medical staff in this hospital almost killed me when I went to give birth in the hospital. It was very difficult experience, very traumatic and very scary. So let's start from the beginning and let's talk about birth options that I had and what I chose and why. Hopefully that will help you choose your options if you are on the fence of whether to give birth naturally, whether to have induction of labor or give birth via C-section like I did. So I finally gave birth through C-section despite going through whole pregnancy planning to give natural birth. That was my initial plan. I was very hard on that. I was very set on natural birth without epidural, and that was my definite decision. I was going to do it this way. The reasons for my choice of natural birth, for myself leaning towards natural birth, was because of limiting the recovery time. I wanted to be at my best shape as soon as possible for my baby, for my family, for myself. So obviously giving birth naturally, it's a very difficult thing, but recovery is faster. Meanwhile, obviously C-section, initial process of giving birth, it's easier in the moment because it only lasts 40 minutes, but the recovery process is very long, up to 6 weeks, and much more drastic, I would say. So why I ended up with C-section despite planning natural birth? So there are a couple of reasons. First, he was very big. He was 3.6 at birth. I gave birth at 39.5 weeks, and we had this conversation with the doctor that if he comes naturally, if the birth will start naturally by my due date, that's great, that's fine. But if it will not start, not by my due date, by 39 weeks, then they will do induction of labor. And the reason for induction of labor from doctor point of view was advanced maternal age, as they say, because I'm over 40, and the fact that he was quite big. So they wanted to do induction of labor. For those of you who don't know what the process of induction of labor is, Induction of labor is, as the name says, a process that induces labor, not naturally, but kind of artificially. There are two ways of doing so. So they first put a balloon in the vagina, which is supposed to break amniotic fluid sac and start the labor that way. If that doesn't work, that process can take a couple of hours. So they can put the balloon inside of you and then send you home for a couple of hours, and then you come back. If it happens, if it doesn't, you also have to come back. They either break the amniotic sac fluid manually, or they also give the injection with artificial hormone, which is supposed to mimic oxytocin, which starts contractions. The oxytocin is the hormone that starts contractions in the natural labor as well. However, it builds up gradually. So the contractions build up from mild to strong ones over time. However, with the injection, it's hard to control that because you've been given the certain amount of oxytocin at once. Therefore, there is no way to control the graduality of contractions growing in strength. Therefore, they are very strong immediately. So that was one of the reasons that I didn't want induction of labor, because this is the process that it's known for causing cascade of medical intervention, starting from the fact that contractions are very strong. Therefore, lots of women immediately ask for epidural. Epidural is the anesthetic that is inserted in your spine, making you numb from chest down. Therefore, that limits birthing options. That means that you can only give birth lying on your back, and that's obviously harder because you don't feel anything from here down. And then that impacts pushing, impacts giving birth due to the position, and therefore it increases the risk of other interventions such as using forceps or vacuum, as well as episiotomy, which is cutting vagina diagonally to avoid a tear. So all of this doesn't sound very good, and all of this takes a long time, which sounds like long hours of enduring lots of suffering. Just the fact that it's stretched so long, and there are lots of other interventions such as possibility of using forceps, vacuum, that all affects baby as well. And yeah, I talked to a friend who gave birth the day before me, and that was her story exactly. So everything that could have potentially go wrong and happen in terms of cascade of medical intervention has happened in her case. So she said she regrets not choosing C-section. I also have another friend who went that route of choosing that route and ended up with emergency C-section anyway, because despite all those attempts, it was not possible to give birth. Baby was big, and it had to end up in emergency C-section. Therefore, she felt like she went through two labors. She went through all the struggles and pain of natural labor, and then also had to endure C-section at the end. So, weighing down all the options, I decided that the best scenario in my individual particular case for me, taking into consideration my age, the fact that the baby is big, the fact that this is my first pregnancy and my first time giving birth, I decided it's better to go for C-section anyway, to avoid the risk of having all these interventions. And I had a feeling that it will be very hard to give birth naturally for me. And the last thing I wanted was to go through all that suffering and yet ended up with C-section. So we opted for C-section. We scheduled it for the day that includes our lucky number. Luckily, it was around that time that it was possible to do so. So the C-section was booked for early morning. I think it was 8 o'clock. We had to be in the hospital at 6 and prepare. So yeah, I'm going to tell you how the experience of C-section looked like first, and then tell you how it ended up in the severe medical emergency that almost cost me life. The reason why I want to tell you about C-section in details was because how positively surprised I was with how everything went with C-section. I didn't expect that. Mind you, I have quite a lot negative experiences with hospitals, with doctors, with medical staff, and health complications in general. Some of this is documented on my channel. I also posted a video about my Hashimoto's disease and how it was mishandled for years and how it led to my intestine perforation that also almost killed me in the past, and that was a very traumatic event for me. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital in Middle East in Abu Dhabi, where I used to live at the time. If you are interested about that story, if you suffer with thyroid disorder problems or Hashimoto disease or any other autoimmune conditions such as celiac disease that I also suffer with, I encourage you to watch that video. It's filled with lots of information that you might find helpful, and it's actually connected to the story of what happened within my birth and how it ended, because as I said, I have lots of autoimmune conditions, including thyroid disorder, Hashimoto's disease, and celiac disease. And those are key points in that story, so mind that. But back to C-section. So we show up in the hospital very early. We met with whole medical staff, with the nurses, midwives, anesthetist, and obstetrician. So everyone was very nice. Everyone took lots of time to question everything, to ask all the right questions to me, to make sure that all questions that I had were answered, and to put me at ease and comfort. And everything was good. I didn't stress that much because of the fact how medical staff was handling it. So everyone was really trying very hard to make this experience the most comfortable for me as possible, especially the anesthetist doctor. He went above and beyond to provide comfort and to make sure I'm not stressed, because I think lots of women are very scared of epidural in the injection in the spine. So what was also very helpful and also very good, which I know is not the case in every country and every hospital, was the fact that my husband was able to be with me the whole time, sitting by my side, holding my hand. So that was the huge reassurance. We were also able to play the music during the surgery in the theater, which also was a very touching moment, because we chose Phil Collins' "You Will Be in My Heart" song, that the moment he was taken out, and I think it also made the moment very special. So that was very touching that they also allowed that. Another doctor and a medical staff were taking pictures of the whole process, so I have lots of pictures of the moment he came out to this world. Also, when he was taken out, I was given an iPad where I could watch the whole thing, the whole process of whatever is being done to him during this time, including my husband cutting off the umbilical cord. And that was during the time I was being staged post-surgery. So I could see everything, so I didn't miss any moment. But back to the whole process. So it starts with epidural, of course. It has to be numbed. The body has to be numbed from here down. So first is the injection, which is supposed to be a painkiller before epidural. So epidural injection itself doesn't feel so painful. It's given also in that spine area. And then it's followed by epidural, which is quite painful. I still could feel it after that injection, but it was not horrendous pain. It was just discomfort. However, I think I have a high pain threshold, and I am able to handle these type of things quite well, which I've been told by medical staff. They were actually surprised that I handle everything so well. I think people have various pain thresholds and various way of reacting to injections, needles, doctor, medical setting, and especially being in the theater right before going into surgery. So obviously everyone reacts differently, and some people don't even know how they're going to react until they are there to face it. So epidural is the injection that is given into the spinal cord in the spine to numb the rest of the body, and that follows very quickly after the epidural is done. And then they wait a couple of minutes. during that time the catheter is also installed in the bladder. And yeah, what's next is they just put the screen up and they cut open. And yeah, I don't know if you're aware, but C-section requires cutting 7 layers of the body, so it's not a walk in the park. It's not just like a simple easy surgery. From the moment the surgery starts, because epidural works really quickly, so they start very quickly as well, you can see the baby within 10 minutes, and everything happens so fast. So the anesthetic doctor was talking to me the whole time, and then before we know it, they show us the baby, and then they put the baby on me so I could touch it, kiss it, see it, and then they took it to another area where it was cleaned and dressed, because obviously in theater the temperature is quite cold, and the newborn just came out of the very warm, fuzzy, pleasant place that he definitely didn't want to leave for the longest time. And that was the moment that I could watch him being dressed, prepared, cleaned, his umbilical cord being handled, and my husband was there with him the whole time. And then the rest of the time of this 40 minutes of duration of the whole C-section, which is now 30 minutes remaining, is used to just stitch up the incision. Also, before they also remove the placenta, and then they stitch up the incision, and everything is done. So very quick, smooth process. Last 40 minutes. After this, I was taken to recovery room, where I spent 2 hours. They have to monitor me to see how the anesthetics were off. It went a little bit up, so I could feel like my speech is affected, but it went down within expected amount of time. So everything was good, nice. I was happy. I didn't feel that much pain because I was on a very strong medication. So I was over the moon with that experience. I was like, this is the best experience. The surgery wasn't that bad. I was prepared for the fact that the pain will hit me later on, but otherwise I was really happy with how things transpired in the theater, with the doctors, with all the staff. They made the whole experience super pleasant for me. After that, after I finished with the recovery in the recovery room, I was taken to my birthing suite. I had my own room with the bathroom. It was a very nice room as well. And this is where I was with the baby to recover for the rest of the day. My husband was with me until the end of visiting hours, which is like 10 p.m. So I felt good in general. Of course, I was under strong influence of very strong painkillers, such as opioid-based painkillers. But overall, I was happy. I was feeling good, despite having catheter attached. I couldn't get up for a few hours. However, the same night I still got up to wash up a bit with the catheter attached. But overall, maybe just because I prepared myself for the worst, it was not so bad for me. I know that there are women who expect that everything will be fairy tale and easy, and then they are hit with the reality, like hit by the truck almost, with how hard and heavy that is. And also the midwives were asking me how I'm handling everything so well. It's because I prepared for the worst, therefore it was not so bad for me. But this is where all the positive experience ends, and this is where it was ruined from then. Because as I was still being very happy and enjoying my experience and living in the bubble of positivity and enjoying every moment, the problem was already brewing. So I've been given painkillers and laxatives by nurses few times a day. Two laxatives pills and the painkillers a couple times a day to manage the pain, not to let it go down to very painful, because then it's very hard to manage it back to the level that is tolerable. And of course laxatives to prevent constipation, because when you had a C-section and you had all the stitches here, trust me, you don't want you don't want to be constipated, obviously. So the next day started. My husband came very early. He surprised me with the beautiful dream push present. I was very happy. My friends came. They brought flowers, they got gifts, and then I got up, I got ready, I put makeup on. I looked like I just had 8 hours of restful sleep and never had any surgery. So yeah, all the staff was saying, wow, you look great, you look super rested, you don't look like you went through any surgery. The painkillers were working enough that I could get up and do things and yeah, just get ready and look normal like I look now. So I was very happy with how everything is going, and I was like, wow, at this pace I'm going to be going home maybe today, maybe tomorrow, and yeah, everything's better than I expected. So I spent all day with my friends and my husband, and of course with the baby, feeding it non-stop and taking million pictures and videos and just being happy in the newborn bubble. And then my husband left at 10. I went to bed after I fed the baby, and the extreme pain, sharp, excruciating pain, woke me up at midnight. It was so bad, I couldn't move, I couldn't even take a full breath. My whole stomach was swollen, but it was swollen asymmetrically. It was swollen on one side, like creating a horn, and it was like a hard mass on one side, very painful, very hard. And I called the nurse. She saw that because it was visibly swollen. I have a picture of that. I'll try to insert that here so you can have a look. She called the doctor immediately. Doctor came and he was actually concerned because what is this? This is something very unusual to happen, to have that type of swelling on one side only. And it was very, very painful. He couldn't even touch it without me almost wanting to scream, like I was grabbing his hand, like don't touch it because I can't take it anymore. And it was cramps. It was, I felt like there was gas inside, like on that side building up to the point like balloon is about to explode. And I felt like it's getting worse and worse and worse. So he went to, he said he doesn't have clear idea of what that can be. That may be hematoma, which is internal bleeding and the blood is building up in one area, like between tissues. So he said that judging by the symptoms and location and the fact that it's just in one side and lots of other things, possibly it's that. But he was not quite sure. So he said he will go and consult his boss, another doctor. And after that, she came down to me as well. And they both together decided that the best is to do MRI to find out what that is, because it's very suspicious and very weird. And the pain was getting worse all the time. So during that time, they brought me again painkillers and laxatives because it was time to take it. And the pain started getting even worse. Also during that time, doctors decided that just because I have a baby and I'm breastfeeding as well, it's not good to do MRI because it's too much radiation. They will do it as a last resort later if needs be. But first they will do X-ray to see if that is blood that is building up, as well as also do the blood test to rule out some other things. So the blood test came inconclusive. The blood test results were first ready and they came inconclusive. So they decided to proceed with X-ray. Mind you, that was the span of few hours. So it's already started at midnight and now we are like 4 a.m. and I am in pain. All this time I cannot even get up. The baby is next to me in the bassinet. I still have to feed it. And I still have to nurse it, and it's waking up and crying, and it was just a nightmare. I didn't want to text my husband in the middle of the night to tell him what's going on because I didn't want to wake him up, because also I wanted him to have good rest. I knew he's coming first thing in the morning, which is around 7:30 anyway. I was hoping that till then it will get resolved. So finally the X-ray was done around 5 a.m. and we were waiting for the result up until 9. The X-ray excluded hematoma, however, it didn't indicate what the reason of the whole problem is. And it was getting worse. And the doctor then again said, like, oh, now I consulted another boss, so we are making it up in the chain of command because they don't know what to do. But then he came to me like afternoon the same day and he asked, how is it? And I said, well, it's actually getting a little bit better, because that was the truth. It was getting a bit better. So he said, okay, let's monitor, because they don't know what the cause is, but let's just see if it's not getting worse. He said, I would be very concerned if it's getting worse, but since it's not getting worse, that's okay. But before it came to this, the whole night I was in so much pain. It was excruciating pain. It was swollen. And the fact that 3 doctors didn't know what's going on was very scary for me. The type of pain I felt, I knew something is extremely wrong. And the fact that he said that I may possibly, like the worst case scenario, of course, if it's progressing, I might end up with surgical intervention. So that would be a complete nightmare, to come to the hospital to give birth, had a C-section, and then needed to have another surgery because something really terribly wrong is brewing here, and they are not even able to find out what was that. And that was the moment it in my mind clicked a little bit, like this is very similar to my intestine perforation that I had in 2018. It was also pain on that side, swelling, like gassy feeling, extremely painful. This type of pain that only is given to you by gluten poisoning. But like, I was thinking it's impossible because I'm in the hospital, the food is very good, I'm on a gluten-free diet. Everyone knows I have celiac disease, everyone knows that I have a history of bowel perforation. All the doctors, nurses, medical staff is aware of all my health complications history, so that cannot be the case. Anyway, long story short, I will try to shorten it up for you here. I got discharged next day on my own request because I thought, like, I feel better. They are still not able to find out what's going on. I'll just take lots of painkillers. Hopefully it will resolve by itself. And I really wanted to go home. So they asked me, like, are you okay to go home? I said yes. And then I was waiting for the medications to take home, that there were injections that I still had to take. I still had to give myself injections in the stomach. There were blood thinning injections to prevent clotting. And the other medications that I had to take with me were all the medications that I was given throughout the duration of my stay in the hospital, which were painkillers and laxatives. Now, those laxatives, those were Coloxyl pills. Turns out they consist gluten. And I was given it a few times a day, 2 pills each time. So it was quite a lot. So the reason for this medical emergency and complication was caused by gluten poisoning. I only found out about what was going on when I was given medication by the pharmacist to go home at my discharge. And that was a big drama. I almost cried and I was so angry, and I couldn't believe that that happened to me in the hospital where I'm supposed to receive help, medical care and attention, that it came to such a negligence. So I was just absolutely mind blown how it came to such a extreme medical negligence from medical staff in the hospital. Out of all places, in the place that I was supposed to be given help and taken care of, I was poisoned with gluten. So for the whole duration of my stay in the hospital, from the day one, from the moment after surgery, from the moment I was taken to the recovery room, I've been given this Coloxyl, 2 pills with every intake, with every serving, that contains gluten. And you know, for a person who has celiac disease, even traces and minimal amount of gluten can contribute to a detrimental result, such as it happened in my case. So I had a intestine perforation back in the day because of gluten consumption, and obviously, as you can imagine, intestine perforation, if not managed soon enough and if help is not given quickly, can end up in death, or at the very least life-saving surgery, which might go either way. So that was extreme stress for me to go through that pain, go through that suffering without not knowing what causes that, without doctors not being able to help me, feeling that it is similar to the experience that I already had in the past while taking care for a baby. It was just a nightmare. And then at the discharge, to discover that that was purely because medical negligence of a hospital staff that had been serving me medications that contained gluten the whole time, few times a day, was just enraging. Sorry, a little break, because I could hear him waking up and he's hungry, so I'm gonna let him have his lunch while I'm still continuing. So, as I said, it's mind-blowing that that happened in the hospital, out of all places. But what is even more scary and concerning is the fact that I only find out about it upon discharge, because I wanted to go home. The pharmacist who was preparing medications to give me to take home with me discovered and told me that this medication that I've been giving the whole time from the beginning contains gluten. If I didn't want to go home and stayed in the hospital hoping for this to get better, I would be still given gluten few times a day with few pills with each intake, and that would progress to become worse and worse and worse, and maybe even, God forbid, would end up in intestine perforation, as I happened and as I suffered in the past. So just the thought of it, that could have ended up so badly, and it only didn't turn into very tragic turn of event, is because I left the hospital. I left the place that was supposed to take care of me, and instead of that, someone didn't do their job. Someone took my life very lightly, didn't give enough of attention to very serious condition, and just took it very lightly, completely. So every time I was given medication, I was asked by the medical staff, by the nurse, and sometimes when they were given opioid-based medication, they came with the witness, and I had to take the medications when they are there. And they also always ask, what's your name? What's your date of birth? And do you have any allergies? So obviously every time I say my name, date of birth, and allergy to gluten. On top of that, on both hands, I had a red bracelet that indicates allergy, and it's written in their file and everywhere, bracelet, everywhere it's written that I have allergy to gluten and then I have celiac disease. So they were doing this mindlessly. They continue giving me medications with gluten, asking me every time if I have allergy. I said allergy to gluten, yet they serve me medication with gluten. I think, it's just my guess, that the error occurred at the pharmacy. So the nurse goes to take medications that are supposed to be given to patients, and in that case was, apart from painkillers, laxatives, and the person who is responsible for discharging medications and give it to the nurse didn't check the patient's file, didn't check my documents, and didn't pay attention to the fact that I have gluten. Could have easily given me different medications that serve the same purpose but don't contain gluten. But this person decided to not do her job or his job properly, and this is the result. That could have cost me life, that could have sent me into unnecessary surgical intervention. I could have left the hospital even more traumatized than I did by having to go through another surgery purely because of someone's negligence, purely because someone came to work and decided not to do their job properly and just take it lightly and automatic, on autopilot, mindlessly, despite all the procedures and despite all the steps that they have to tick off, yet the person still did it automatically, mindlessly, thoughtlessly, on autopilot, and putting someone's life, in that case my life, putting someone's life at risk, and also causing me extreme amount of pain, suffering, having to go through unnecessary x-ray while I'm breastfeeding, while I'm taking care of my baby, the day after C-section, also having me to take unnecessary medication to manage the pain that was caused not by C-section only, but by this medical emergency caused by gluten, this gluten reaction, this mass that formed here, the extreme pain, cramps, and all night of suffering was unnecessary and caused because of somebody's negligence. And of course, doctors didn't know what's going on, and because they didn't even think that that could have been the cause, that someone could give gluten to a patient who have celiac disease. So they were not even considering that thing as an option. But to be honest, they should have. All the medications has been double checked when they go through possible reasons of what might have happened. Anyway, it was a big issue. I'm glad I luckily came out of this without further complications, without surgery, without perforation. That would be such a tragedy, such a tragic thing. I am glad that I was able to recover. So someone is there looking out for me, looking down upon me and having me and the baby in their care, because that could have ended up very, very bad. By the stroke of luck, or I don't know what, I wanted to go home that day, and that was discovered. However, before going home, before they discovered that, they still gave me those pills again, before it was discovered that they consider gluten. So I took those pills again before leaving home. And as a result of that, the same evening, I ended up in emergency because of the same thing happened again. So that was managed with medications. When I was in the emergency, they gave me medications that kind of helped that. But I spent hours there in emergency with my husband by my side, with the newborn, breastfeeding, crying out of pain, fearing for my life, feeling like, oh my God, this is happening again. I'm going to have this perforation. Now I know what it is. Now I know what's the reason. Now I know that I've been given gluten again before I left the hospital. It's only getting worse. My intestinal lining is already compromised, not because of past perforation only, but also because I've been given gluten now for 3 days, couple times a day, few pills every time with every intake. And I was in my mind seeing that scenario developing, that it would come to the worst. I was actually fearing for my life. I was like, I don't want to go through surgery. I don't want to have emergency surgery. I don't want to have MRI. I don't want to go through this radiation. I don't want to impact my baby. It was like whole mess. I was crying there. I was crying to the nurses. They were trying to help, but the surgeon who was supposed to see me was not coming on time because he was, of course, that was emergency. So first, of course, he has to deal with acute trauma patients that arrive unexpectedly. But that was like a horror and entire madness. Anyway, I finally came back home that day at 10 p.m. Instead of going back home on the happy note with my baby, happily, like that bringing baby home should be a happy moment. We were exhausted. I was in pain. I was like completely knocked out, worn out, stressed and traumatized with the whole event. It was just horrific. Anyway, I wrote a massive complaint. Obviously, the lawyers will deal with the rest. We will see how that will go, because this is the process now that has to be investigated. The critical incident report has been filed. So I'm waiting for their response and how it will be handled. It's still a matter of the future. We will see how it will be handled. But yeah, that was my story. So otherwise positive birth experience that could have been so good, because all the doctors that were dealing with C-section, all the doctors that were dealing with my post-recovery, the nurses, the midwives, they've all done incredible job. So otherwise, that would be such a positive experience. The food was very good in the hospital, and everything was good. And that was ruined by someone's negligence. I had to go through unnecessary suffering and the risk of really fearing for my life at that point. So obviously the whole experience from the day after the surgery till the moment I came back home was altered, affected and ruined by this experience, by this unnecessary pain and the whole events that followed. But regardless of that, the next day I woke up with the positive mindset. I was still suffering the repercussions of gluten poisoning. I still had pain, I still had digestive issues, I still have a swelling on that side of the stomach where the intestine was swelled up and filled with gas due to gluten indigestion and gluten consumption. I chose to be happy and I chose to be positive and not focus on negative experience. So when I told some people what happened, they started to talk more about it, and I was like, no, I just don't want to talk about it. I want to focus on what was positive out of it, and I will deal with the legal part of it and the complaint part of it and investigation part of it later when I recover. So I chose to focus on positive aspects of the whole thing. I was grateful for the positive experience with the doctors who were doing C-section. I was grateful with how the C-section experience looked like, how I saw my baby. I was grateful with the fact that finally we got someone that we worked so hard for the last couple of years. And I chose to be happy and positive about the whole thing, not focusing on what went wrong, but cautiously choosing to focus on what went right. And for the next few days, I just immersed myself in the happily newborn bubble. I was just with him non-stop, couldn't take my eyes off of him, spending every waking and sleeping moment with him by my side, feeding him and just staring at him, taking million pictures and videos. I was also recovering from the C-section at the time, which took time and was very, very drastic and very painful. But at least I had my happily ever after finally, and I knew that things will get better every day from then on, that the recovery will follow in due time and expected time, that of course discomfort and pain are expected postpartum, post C-section recovery. But luckily I had my husband with me every day helping me. He took over changing diapers and lots of things just to make everything as easy and smooth recovery wise for me as possible. So I'm very grateful for my husband who was there for me, like fighting like a lion for me as well in the hospital during this problematic mishappening as well. He was there for me, so I didn't have to stress about many things. And now 3 weeks later, we're here now and everything is great. Of course, I'm a little bit sad that this is the experience that I had to endure, that I had to go through that. But as I said, I'm choosing to look at the positive aspect of what happened only, anyway, just for the sake of my sanity and for the sake of how I feel, because I know how I feel will affect how the baby feels, will affect the whole family situation. So I don't let myself to spiral into thinking about it and to put myself in the negative mood because of that. So yeah, all in all, look what we have, and it was all worth it. All the years of IVF, all the years of struggle and stress, pain, surgeries led me all to this, and it is everything I imagined. It exceeded expectations and all I ever wanted. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope this story helped you who are planning your birth experience and making your choices. Hopefully it also made you be mindful and vigilant and look out for yourself. If you have any allergies and you go to hospital, make sure it's hammered and plastered in front of everyone's face so many times. Better to do it excessively and overdo it than let something like this slide and create emergency like it happened in my case. So hopefully that will not be your case. And if you are expecting mom right now or planning, my fingers are crossed for you. I wish you all the best, and I wish you smooth journey, smooth delivery, and happy and healthy baby. So thank you again so much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel if you are new here, and I will also link the videos that are relevant to this in the description box, and I hopefully will see you in my next one. Bye!